I spent a full day inside Bodie, California's last true ghost town, and found a building that almost no day tripper ever reaches on their own. Most visitors walk the main street, take their photos, and leave without knowing that the park holds over 100 structures spread across an area most people never explore. There is a section near the stamp mill where the ground still shows the chemical scars of a gold operation that ran day and night for decades. What I didn't expect to find was evidence that someone, or something, had been moving objects inside a locked building. Bodie isn't a theme park dressed up to look old, and it isn't a museum behind glass keeping everything safe and tidy. It's a town that was simply abandoned mid sentence, and the state of California has committed to letting it fall apart on its own terms. They call it arrested decay, which sounds clinical until you're standing inside a kitchen where the breakfast dishes are still on the table. Rangers here don't just manage a historic site, they manage something that genuinely unsettles the people who work it. And before you can understand why, you need to understand the road that gets you there, because Bodie doesn't let you arrive easy. The last 13 miles to Bodie don't ease you in yet. They strip everything familiar away, 1 mile at a time. You leave Highway 395 somewhere past Bridgeport, and the pavement holds for a while, just long enough to feel normal. Then the road turns to dirt and washboard, and your whole car starts rattling like it's trying to shake loose from the present. There's no radio signal out here, no cell service, no billboard telling you how far you've got left. The high desert opens up around you. Pale sage, volcanic rock, and sky so wide it feels slightly wrong. You're climbing toward 11,000 feet, and the wind doesn't stop, not even for a second. Every mile, the landscape gets a little more severe, a little more indifferent to the fact that you're in it. So ask yourself what you're actually expecting to find at the end of this road. Because whatever it is, Bodie will quietly correct you. First thing you notice when you walk into Bodie is that nothing has been cleaned up for you. Curtains hang in windows, rotted to lace, still framing a view nobody has looked through in a century. A child's shoe sits on a bedroom floor like the kid just stepped out of it yesterday. This is the official policy. The state of California calls it arrested decay, which means they preserve the town exactly as it was found, letting it age without letting it collapse. Rangers don't repaint the walls or replace the floorboards. They stabilize what's there so it doesn't fall any further. What you're seeing isn't neglect. It's one of the most precise preservation decisions in American park history. There are still 10 structures standing across roughly 100 acres of high desert at 375 feet above sea level. Furniture sits inside those buildings. Dishes on shelves, bottles on counters, a calendar on a wall stopped at a month nobody remembers leaving. You're not looking at a reconstruction of what life was like. You're looking at the actual thing, just interrupted. The town you're walking through right now was once home to 10,000 people, and it got there fast. A single gold strike in 1859 started it, but the real explosion came in 1876, when a cave-in accidentally exposed one of the richest ore deposits in California history. Within 2 years, Bodie had 65 saloons, a red light district, and a murder rate that made frontier journalists call it the roughest town in the West. Families who moved there reportedly prayed for their children before the journey, and one little girl famously wrote in her diary, "Goodbye, God, we are going to Bodie." At its peak, the mines were pulling out roughly $100 million worth of gold and silver in today's money every single year. Then the ore ran thin, the investors pulled out, and the people followed. By 1910, the population had collapsed to a few hundred stubborn holdouts. 2 fires finished what poverty started, one in 1892, another in 1932, burning entire city blocks down to ash and foundation stones. What survived wasn't saved by anyone's intention. It just survived, standing in the cold and the wind, slowly losing the fight against time. Most visitors walk Main Street, snap a few photos, and leave thinking they've seen Bodie. They haven't even scratched the surface of what this park holds. The state of California maintains over 100 structures here, and rangers will tell you the official policy is to let them decay naturally, touching nothing. That philosophy is called arrested decay, and it means every broken window and collapsed ceiling is exactly as the last residents left it. You can peer through glass into kitchens still set with dishes, bedrooms with iron beds rusting under dusty quilts. The stamp mill at the edge of town is where the real money was made, crushing ore around the clock, and guided tours take you inside its enormous rusting machinery. But most day trippers never push past the mill toward the outer structures, where the cemetery sits quiet on a wind-scraped hill above town. That cemetery is where Bodie stops feeling like a museum and starts feeling like something else entirely. And the secrets buried up there are ones the brochure won't mention. Most visitors walk the main street, take their photos, and leave thinking they've seen Bodie. They've seen maybe a third of it. The park covers over 500 acres, and the outer edges hold structures that haven't had a tourist near them in years. If you push past the obvious cluster of buildings toward the mine works on the hill, you'll find machinery still coated in the original grease from the day the workers walked out. That grease hasn't been touched in over a century and nobody's cleaned it up, because cleaning it up would mean it happened here and not somewhere else. The stamp mill floor is something rangers almost never mention. The mercury used to process gold soaked so deep into that wood that the planks are still technically toxic today. You're standing on a century of contamination and calling it a photo op. Down in the residential blocks, some of the beds are still made, dishes still stacked, as if the families just stepped outside for a moment that never ended. That detail isn't preserved for effect. It's preserved because nobody ever came back to disturb it. And that raises the question of what happens to the people who do disturb it. Rangers at Bodie keep a file that most state parks would never admit exists. A growing collection of letters from people who took something and paid for it. A rusted nail pocketed on a Tuesday, and by Friday the writer had lost their job and their dog in the same week. A piece of window glass, small enough to forget about, followed one family through 3 car accidents over 2 years. These aren't campfire stories invented by a bored docent. They're postmarked confessions, mailed back with the object inside and a handwritten apology. The Rangers call it the Bodie curse, and they've watched the file grow thicker every single season. What makes it genuinely unsettling isn't the bad luck itself. It's the specificity of the letters. People don't write vague complaints about misfortune. They describe a feeling that something is wrong, a low, persistent wrongness that only lifted when the object went back. You can dismiss that as guilt and coincidence, and maybe you're right. But the Rangers don't throw those letters away, and the returned packages keep arriving, and Bodie just keeps standing there, waiting to see what you decide to do. So you've heard the history, felt the weight of the curse, and now you actually want to go. Here's what you need to know. Bodie State Historic Park is open year-round, but summer hours run from 8 in the morning until 7 at night, and winter hours shrink to 9 to 4. The road into Bodie is paved most of the way, but the last 3 miles are rough dirt, and in winter that stretch can close without warning. If you want to camp nearby, Bridgeport Reservoir and Lundy Canyon both sit within 30 minutes and offer sites that feel genuinely remote. The most coveted experience, though, is Bodie in winter, a rare ranger-led program that opens the town under snow, when the silence gets almost unbearable. It runs only a handful of dates each year and spots fill fast, so check the California State Parks website the moment you start planning. As the sun drops behind the ridge and the shadows stretch across those broken rooftops, Bodie doesn't feel like a museum. It feels like something that never quite finished leaving.